Hey, Big Dave the Middle-Aged Gamer here with another Diablo 4 class guide. Today we are going to be looking at the Rogue, the first of the two non-spellcaster classes we will be taking a look at. I picked this one first because, believe it or not, this one is a little more straightforward than your than the Barbarian is. And when we get to the Barbarian, you'll see why. Okay, so right now we have the layout of how the Rogue looks. He carries two different weapon styles with him, double blades and a bow. And yes, that means you use two different build styles. We currently have, oh god, listen to my voice crack. We currently have yeah, listen to me completely overcorrect for that. We currently have set up for a melee build, and we're going to go over the options, and we'll break everything down here. We start with the cutthroat skills, which are your melee attacks, and I've gone with the basic attack called Blade Shift, which quickly stabs your victim for 132 damage, and Shift, which allows you to move freely through enemies for 3 seconds, which basically means it's when it says shit's like phase shifting, like Shadowcat from the X-Men, and for those who read, it's you kind of go ethereal and you can move through things. You know what it says. Let's look at the modifiers real quick. Enhanced Blade Shift gives you 5% bonus movement speed when you damage an enemy, and you can do that up to 4 times for an up to 20% boost, which, again, more freedom of movement while you're fighting is nice. Then you have the two optionals. I chose Primary Blade Shift. While it's active, gain 15% resistance to all non-physical attacks and reduce the duration of incoming control crowd controls by 20%. Which, yeah, different form of freedom of movement. The option I declined, moving through enemies refreshes its duration. After moving through enemies 5 times, your next Blade Shift will daze enemies for 2 seconds. Which sounds nice and everything, but yeah, you got to be using that an awful lot to get that effect, and I like the defensive aspect better. The skill the cutthroat skill I declined is called Invigorating Strike. Melee attack an enemy, dealing 144 damage and increasing enemy regeneration by 20% for 3 seconds. That sounds nice. It really does, because you can always use more energy. But the Rogue energy meter slowly does get, well, I wouldn't necessarily say slowly, it actually goes back up at a pretty moderate clip, faster than most of the other classes. And let's look at its modifiers here. You have Enhanced Invigorating Strike, damaging a crowd controlled or injured enemy with it increases its energy regeneration bonus to 30%, so that's a 10% bonus. And the optionals, you have Fundamental Invigorating Strike, hitting an enemy while you are below 50% energy makes them vulnerable for 3 seconds, or Invigorating Strike, for Primary Invigorating Strike, it grants an 8% lucky hit chance hitting a crowd-controlled or injured enemy increases to 16%, which admittedly is kind of nice. But, well, one, I made my bed with Blade Shift and I'm going to lie in it. The other 3 are all marksman skills, and we'll get to those when we do the marksman build. So now we're at the core skills, where it's just more marksman or melee, or cutthroat. Now, you're going to see things here that labeled imbuable. We'll get to that later, so let's not worry about that now. Let's go first with the skill that I declined. It's called Twisting Blades. Impales an enemy with your blades, dealing 245 damage and making him take 8% increased damage from you while impaled. After a second and a half, the blades return to you, piercing enemies for 392 damage, which sounds really nice. Energy cost is 28. Alright. The optional, alright, the modifiers. The basic, Enhanced Twisting Blades, deals 30% increased damage when returning. Ouch. And the optionals: advanced twisting blades. When they return, your active cooldowns are reduced by a tenth of a second per enemy they pass through, up to 2 seconds. And the other is improved twisting blades. Enemies are dazed while impaled, which sounds nice. Now here's what I chose. It's called Flurry. For 23 energy, unleash a flurry of stabs and slashes, striking enemies in front of you 4 times and dealing a total of 457 damage to each. So basically, it's a no range area effect. Now let's look at the modifiers. We have enhanced flurry. Each time flurry damages a crowd-controlled or vulnerable enemy, you are healed for 1% of your maximum life, up to 12% per cast. Hell yeah, healing good. Let's look at the modifiers. I chose the optionals. I chose advanced flurry. Evading through an enemy will cause your next flurry to stun enemies for 2.6 seconds. Ties in nicely with blade shift. And then finally you have improved flurry, which I declined. If it hits any vulnerable enemy, it will make all enemies hit by that cast vulnerable for 3 seconds, which is also nice. You really can't go wrong with either, but I went with this one. If you decide to go with invigorating strike, that makes your option kind of easier. You're going to want to go with improved flurry. Alright, now we move on to agility skills. Now things are going to change a little bit here. You'll notice there are no marksman skills. So we're going to go over all of these. Alright? Well, actually we're not going to go over caltrops. We'll get to that one with the agility build because it'll be useful there. Now you'll notice I chose both of the agility skills here for this melee build. We'll start with Shadow Step because that's the one I chose first. 9-second cooldown, also imbuable. Become unstoppable and quickly move through the shadows to stab your victim from behind for 553 damage. Wow. Gain 50% increased movement speed for 2 seconds afterwards. That doesn't sound like it's nice, but not for very long, but it does have its benefits. Let's look at the modifiers. Enhanced Shadow Step. Damaging an enemy with Shadow Step increases your critical hit strike chance against them by 8% for 3 seconds. And then you have your optionals. Methodical Shadow Step. Enemies damaged are stunned for 2.08 seconds. You see where I'm going with this. I declined Disciplined Shadow Step, where the cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds when it damages an enemy you have not hit with Shadow Step in the last 4 seconds. Okay, that's fine, but when you're in a massive throng of enemies or fighting a boss, it's going to be kind of hard to tell which one is which, so kind of not worth it. I'll just stick with Methodical Shadow Step. I love stunning things. Let's look at the other one I chose. It's Dash. 2 charges, cooldown 9.84 seconds. Dash forward, slash enemies for 264 damage. Sounds kind of straightforward. Great way to close in on an enemy, and that's true. I have not maxed it out yet at this point, as you can see. Let's look at the modifiers. Enhanced Dash. Enemies damaged by dash take 15% in chance. Increased critical strike damage from you for 5 seconds. Nice. Now looking at the optionals, we have Methodical Dash, which is what I chose. Dealing damage to crowd-controlled enemies with Dash. Reduces its charge cooldown by half a second up to 3 seconds per cast. If I got a lot of stunning in there, that can make Dash really make use this a lot more. Go all over the battlefield. One I declined is Disciplined Dash, which slows enemies that hit by 30% for 3.13 seconds. Any enemy already slow will be dazed for 2 seconds instead. You honestly can't really go wrong with either one of them. So, as far as I'm concerned, for that one, the choice is up to you. Then we have Subterfuge skills, and I do have one chosen here. And these are various and different things. There are no marksmen or cutthroats here, so we'll go through the one I did choose, which is called Concealment. Which I actually used for, which I think of the bunch is actually the best one, because I also used this for my archery build. But let's get to it now. 20-second cooldown, you vanish from sight, gaining an advanced form of stealth for 4 seconds that will not be removed by taking damage, which is nice. Concealment also makes you unstoppable. Very useful there. Grants 30% movement speed bonus, and allows you to move freely through enemies for its duration. Using an attack skill during concealment will break it. Alright, and further upgrades will reduce the cooldowns. Look at the optional, look at the modifiers. First one is Enhanced Stealth. You gain 40 energy when you enter concealment. So not only can you use this to break out of a crowd control, you can also use this as an energy buff if you run out. And looking at the optionals, I went with Subverting Stealth, the skill that breaks concealment always makes our enemies vulnerable for 6 seconds. The one I declined instead gives a guaranteed critical strike. They're both incredibly useful. Now let's look at what we didn't touch on. And we're going to start with Dark Shroud. Surround yourself with up to 5 protective shadows, gaining 8% damage reduction per active shadow. Each time you take direct damage, that damage is reduced and the shadow is consumed. So, if you feel like you need some defense and some protection, because even with all your best administrations, you still get your ass whooped, this is one to potentially look into. Let's look at the modifiers. Enhanced Dark Shroud. Dark Shroud's shadows have a 10% chance to not be consumed. Hello! Now let's look at the modifiers. We have Countering Dark Shroud. When you have at least 4 active shadows, you gain an 8% critical strike chance. The other one is Subverting Dark Shroud. Each active shadow from Dark Shroud grants you 4% increased movement speed. Okay? Now, we have our first grenade. It's called Smoke Grenade. 15-second cooldown. Throws a smoky concoction at enemies that dazes them for 4.17 seconds. I thought about this one pretty heavily. Looking at the modifiers, Enhanced Smoke Grenade. Enemies affected by Smoke Grenade take 50% increased damage from you. You also have Countering Smoke Grenade, which is one of the optionals. Lucky Hit. Dealing direct damage to enemies affected by Smoke Grenade has up to a 25% chance to reduce its cooldown by a second, or by 3 if the enemy is vulnerable. Doing a vulnerable build, you might want to consider this. The other option is Subverting Smoke Grenade. If the enemy is vulnerable, slowed, or chilled, then Smoke Grenade will daze them for 20% longer. And then we're going to get to our first trap. Well, actually, second trap, but we're going to get to the first one when we go through the archery build. Poison Trap. Places a trap that arms after 1.25 seconds. 10-second cooldown, by the way. It activates when the enemy moves within range, applying 1,850 poisoning damage over 9 seconds to enemies in the area. You can have 4 armed traps out at once, which sounds really nice. The trick is, because it's trapped, you gotta make them hit it, which is sometimes easier said than done. Looking at the modifiers, Enhanced Poison Trap knocks down enemies for a second and a half when it activates. But the optional Countering Poison Trap has a 30% chance to reset your immunity skill cooldowns when activated. We'll get to that in just a bit. The other option is Subverting Poison Trap. You deal 10% increased poison damage to enemies standing inside it. Wow. Alright. So that is the Subterfuge skills, and now we get to the imbuements. They provide you with some elemental bonuses. Yeah! Now you notice for this one, I have not chosen any, even though everything is imbuable otherwise. We'll actually get to that. Actually, no, we're going to skip this for now. We're going to get to it when I do the archery build. You'll see why. Alright, now we get to the ultimates. I chose Shadow Clones, the only one I thought made any sense for this for melee. The Shadow mimics your actions for 15 seconds. This Shadow Clone deals 80% of your damage. Actually, it starts off as 60%, but with this modifier here, Supreme Shadow Clone, you get an extra 20%, which is why it says 80. Math. The other modifier, Prime Shadow Clone, you're unstoppable for 5 seconds after casting it. Another get out of jail free card. Gotta love that. And then finally, we get to our key passes, which is what these builds center around. I chose Momentum. Cutthroat skills gain a stack of momentum for 8 seconds. If they either hit a stunned, dazed, or frozen enemy, or hit any enemy from behind. And while you're at 3 stacks of momentum, you gain 20% increased damage reduction, 30% increased energy regeneration, and 15% increased movement speed. So that takes care of a lot of issues you may have right off the bat. Other possible options I was looking at. Close quarters combat, damaging a close enemy with a marksman or cutthroat skill, each grant a 10% attack speed bonus for 8 seconds. While both attack speed bonuses are active, you deal 20% increased damage against crowd-controlled enemies. I did not choose that because that implies you're doing kind of a little bit of both. That's fine. You can make a totally perfect build out of that. I'm not that kind of guy. I prefer to specialize instead of jack of all trades. This game I found that, well, at least in my experiences, jack of all trades tends to get you killed. Looking at the other key, okay, this is just a straight marksman. We'll get back to that one. Victimize. If you have a lucky hit build, this is one for you. Dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has up to a 30% chance to cause an explosion. Actually, if you're doing a vulnerable build, this is good. Dealing 23% of the original damage to that and surrounding enemies. You also have another lucky hit, it's called Exposure. Dealing direct damage to an enemy affected by a trap skill has up to a 25% chance to reduce the active cooldowns of your trap skills by 20%. Drop a cluster of exploding stun grenades that deal 221 total physical damage and stun enemies for half a second. And as I said, we will get back to that. Alright. So, now that I've given you a quick rundown of the melees, let's take a look-see and what this melee build can do. We just gotta find some baddies. Okay, so you saw this is just the case if you want, and you saw me moving through things. But stinging swarms aren't exactly a good representation of what to expect. Okay. Okay, that's half of insanity there. Flurry. Now you see this guy here? That's your backstab. There's your dash. Yeah, I disappeared for a bit, but you saw my big swing energy. And allows you to increase and allows you to flurry some more, which is always nice. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about the ultimate I have.
Need more time.
And sometimes the cooldown on the Shadow Clone went down considerably when using some skills. That, I believe, is actually the same modifier. Where was it? Okay, there was some... Oh, I remember now. But one thing I forgot to cover. Specializations. After you do the Rogue class quest, which, good news, is in Act 1. You start off with something called combo points. And we'll show those off real quick. Alright, so I'm going to have one of these basic, right? I have 3. Now watch with the flow. You unload a lot more attacks with it. Here, you know what? Don't just watch that. Let me show you through here. Alright, combo points increase damage and grant an attack speed bonus. 1 point, it gives you... And see there.
Out of energy.
Okay, let's try that again. With the combo system, which is kind of nice. You see the base damage there, which I told you before. You get a 50% attack bonus per each combo point in, up to 45% with 3. And the damages go 572, then 686, and 801. Which means this thing hits a hell of a lot harder and strikes a hell of a lot faster. And you got a combo there. Okay, let's get back to relative safety here. Yeah, with Quest Giver. And now, we're going to switch Okay, you have another specialization called Inner Sight. Attacks marked enemies to fill your inner sight gauge. When it's full, gain unlimited energy for 4 seconds, which is... I have a problem with it because, one, the inner sight gauge takes forever to uncoil. And it's right there. As you kill marked enemies, this will start filling, and when it does, while that's going, you will have unlimited energy. And remember when it says it's 4 seconds. That's not very long. So I tend to skip this one. Not a fan. Get this at level 20. Honestly, I think you should just stick with the combo points when you get it. At level 30, you get what's called Preparation, which is my favorite one. Every 100 enemy you spend reduces your ultimate skill's cooldown by 4 seconds. So you happen to notice that while I was flurrying the hell out of everything, that ultimate went down. But when you use that ultimate, it resets the cooldowns of your other skills. So it turns your ultimate into an amazing panic button. Alright? So I highly recommend that. But Dave, I don't want to be a melee build. I want to be an archer. Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to show you how that works. Now we're going to go through every single marksman skill to start. First we have Puncture. Throw blades at a short distance, dealing 132 damage every third cast. Slows enemies by 20% for 2 seconds. Critical strikes will always slow. Then we have your modifier. Your first one, Enhanced Puncture. Gain 2 energy when puncture damages a crowd-controlled enemy. With your options being Primary Puncture. Every third cast will also ricochet up to 2 times. Critical strikes will always ricochet. The other one is Fundamental Puncture. That now throws 3 blades in a spread. Blech. Each dealing 35% of its base damage. Hitting an enemy with at least 2 blades at once makes them vulnerable for 2 seconds. Okay. Then you have Heartseeker. Fires an arrow that seeks an enemy, dealing 186 damage and increasing your critical strike chance against them by 3% for 4 seconds, up to 15%. Modifiers being Enhanced Heartseeker. When it critically strikes, gain 8% attack speed for 4 seconds, doing this amount, double this if the enemy is vulnerable. Your options are Fundamental Heartseeker, also increases critical strike damage the enemy takes from you by 5% for 4 seconds, up to 25%. Or Primary Heartseeker, ricochets to an additional enemy, dealing 30% of the original damage. What I normally go with is Forceful Arrow. Max that out. Fires a powerful arrow at your enemy, and with every third cast making them vulnerable for 2 seconds. Alright, modifiers. You have Enhanced Forceful Arrow. Every third cast and also additionally has a 15% increased critical strike chance. Looking at the optionals, you have Primary Forceful Arrow. It pierces through vulnerable enemies, or Forceful Arrow knocks back non-elite enemies if they are close. If they collide with another enemy, both are knocked down for a second and a half. Decisions. I'm going to go with the knockdown. Yes, it doesn't work on elites or bosses, but you know what? So what? You can use that. You can. It says it knocks back non-elite enemies. It doesn't say it won't knock down elite enemies. So you can use a non-elite to knock down an elite. At least that's the way I read it. Alright, now we're looking at the cores. We have Barrage. Unleash a barrage of 5 arrows that expands outwards, each dealing 152 damage. Each arrow has a 20% chance to ricochet off an enemy up to 1 time. Ricochets deal 40% of the arrow's base damage. Options are Enhanced Barrage. Ricochet chances increase to 100% for arrows that damage a vulnerable enemy or critically strike an enemy. And your options are Improved Barrage. Every third cast, it makes enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. Where have I seen that before? Or Advanced Barrage. When a single caster barrage ricochets at least 4 times your next cast gains 20% increased critical strike chance. We also have Penetrating Shot. Fires an arrow that pierces through all enemies in a line, dealing a fair amount of damage. Options are modifier. You have Enhanced Penetrating Shot, which deals a 10% increased damage for enemy it pierces. Optionals: Advanced Penetrating. You have when it casts with full energy, Penetrating Shot will slow all enemies it hits by 50% for 3 seconds. Elite enemies will also be knocked down for a second and a half. Nice. The other option is Improved Penetrating Shot, which, if it damages at least 3 enemies, your next Penetrating Shot has a 20% increased critical strike chance. Whatever. However, I went with Rapid Fire. Rapidly fires 5 arrows, each doing 300 damage. Then you have your first modifier, Enhanced Rapid Fire. Each subsequent arrow from Rapid Fire has a 5% increased critical strike chance, up to 25% for the 5th arrow. Your options: Improve Rapid Fire, gain 15 energy per cast of Rapid Fire when it damages a vulnerable enemy, or Advanced Rapid Fire, which deals 30% increased critical strike damage for 3 seconds after you evade. So let's base this off of what we did. We have Forceful Arrow. It makes vulnerability. So we'll take Improved Rapid Fire. Alright, moving on. Get to the agility skills. Remember I said before about caltrops? We're talking about it now. Caltrops. That's ridiculous. It's a trap. It's the first one you're going to run into. 2 charges, 12-second cooldown, leap backwards to throw caltrops on the ground, dealing 445 damage and slowing enemies by 65%, last 6 seconds. The reason why I said this is great for archers is because of the leap back. It creates some distance. Looking at the modifiers, enhanced caltrops take 3% increased damage from you each second they are in it. So, nice. Looking at the optionals, we have caltrops enable deals cold damage and chills enemies for 20% per second, or 5% critical. You have a 5% critical strike chance against enemies inside your caltrops. Double this against vulnerable enemies. Yes, please. All right, moving on. Subterfuge. Remember what I said before about concealment? Concealment, as I said, stealth, energy, vulnerability. Alright, now to get to imbuement skills, I chose cold, and that's just because the equipment's giving me a ton of it. I like this because it imbues your 13-second cooldown, which is on par with the others. You also have Shadow and Poison, but we'll get to those. I chose this because your next 2 imbuable skills that deal cold damage and chill will deal cold damage and chill enemies by 33% per hit. Alright. So remember, when you get to 100, you freeze the enemies. Alright. Modifiers. Enhanced cold imbuement. Cold imbued skills have up to a 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. Now you know why I chose it. Yes, my archery is a vulnerability build. I'm looking at the options. Cold imbued skills deal 20% damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Double this bonus against Frozens. Or a Lucky Hit. Now, I'm not a big fan of Lucky Hit for a certain reason. So I chose Mixed Cold Improvement. Imbuement. Let's look at the other ones real quick. We have Poison Imbuement. With 13-second cooldown, imbue your weapons with lethal poison. Your next 2 imbuable skills deal poison damage and apply 100% of their base damage as additional poisoning damage over 5 seconds. Not bad. Looking at the modifiers, you have Enhanced Poison Imbuement, and now the poisoning duration lasts a second longer. Optionals, you have Blended Poison Imbuement. Critical strikes with poison imbued skills deal 75% increased poisoning damage. Yikes. Or Mixed Poison Imbuement. It's a Lucky Hit base. Poison imbued skills have up to a 30% chance to apply double the amount of poisoning damage over time. Forgot to actually look at the Lucky Hit one. I just went, fuck it. For Blended Cold, its critical strikes with cold imbued skills have up to a 20% chance to instantly freeze enemies. Not really a high chance there, so it's a 20% chance on top of getting a Lucky Hit. So it's like, that might never happen, so... Alright, then you have Shadow Imbuement, 13-second cooldown. Imbues your weapons with Festering Shadows. Your next 2 imbuable skills deal shadow damage and infect enemies for 6 seconds. Affected enemies explode on death, dealing 199 damage to all surrounding enemies. If the infection expires before the enemy dies, it will deal 199 damage to only that enemy. Looking at the modifiers, you have Enhanced Shadow Imbuement, 50% chance increased critical strike chance against injured enemies infected by the Shadow Imbuement. Now, it doesn't say anything about non-bosses or anything, so it's got its uses. And then you have your options. Blended Shadow Imbuement. Shadow Imbuement's primary explosion makes enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. I considered this. For this vulnerable build, you could do it. It could work. Yep. especially considering that's pretty much an area effect when it goes kablooey, which is nice. And then you have mixed shadow imbuement. Enemies affected by shadow imbuement take 12% increased non-physical damage in 8 seconds, so it's a different form of poison. Okay. But you can see why I chose what I chose. Yep. Hate it when that happens. Now let's look at the ultimates. The one we did not choose for either is called Death Trap. Place a trap that arms after a second and a quarter. It activates when an enemy moves within range, dealing a total of 1,343 damage to each enemy in the area. Modifiers are Prime Death Trap. Enemies are pulled into it when it activates. Supreme Death Trap. If Death Trap kills an enemy, its cooldown is reduced by 10 seconds. Now I suppose you could make a trap build, but in this game, I mean, there are 3 different traps, one in each tiered. And you got your caltrops, you got your poison trap, and now you got your death trap. Suppose you could do that. And caltrops does have the option for cold damage. It's here. You got your poison trap here, shadow trap here, and you have imbuables. So the fact is, the traps are not imbuable. If you'd use a trap build, you can actually skip this. But I wouldn't know exactly how to fill the rest of it. But I chose the one marksman ultimate, Rain of Arrows. Arrows rain down over a large area twice, each wave dealing 689 damage. Hell yeah. This one is also imbuable. Looking at your modifiers, you have Prime Rain of Arrows. Imbuement skills are applied by a Rain of Arrows have a 20% increased potency. Let's do the math here. Alright, chill amounts 35%. So increase that by 20% and deals cold damage, so that will increase 2%. But let's see, 33%, so 10% of that is 3.3, so that's 6.6, so it's about a 40% chill rate. Not bad at all. Looking at the damage, if that becomes cold damage, about 690 damage, so 10% of that is 69. Nice. Double that's 138, and now all of a sudden you're looking at about 800 damage per wave. Wow. Alright, that is the power of Prime Rain of Arrows. Look at the other modifier, which we are going to grab. It is called Supreme Rain of Arrows. Has nothing to do with pizza. Rain of Arrows, second wave, knock down enemies for 3 seconds. Oh, yeah. If it survives both waves, it won't get flattened. Now, here, with your... Remember, I discussed this before. Here is your key passive. I'm going to choose Precision. Critical strikes with marksman skills grant you precision. You gain 4% increased critical strike damage per stack, up to a maximum of 20%, so you get 5 stacks. When you reach max precision, your next marksman skill guaranteed crit strike that deals 40% increased critical strike damage and consumes all stacks. That's fine. So basically, it turns every shot gets better and better until you get a guaranteed crit hit, and then it just starts the process all over again. Hell yeah. Alright. Now we're going to leave preparation on, because, yeah. Now, let's look for some trouble. Okay. Oh, look at that, a couple of topazes. What do we got here? Okay. This is basically the rapid fire I absolutely love. It just does a huge concentration. Lots of fun. Alright, let's look for some other trouble to start. Pause here. Okay. There's Caltrops.
I'm low on energy.
I threw the cold imbuement on, and turn my arrows icy, which is nice. And yes, Caltrops works on flying critters too. But you'd like to see that. Alright, let's look for some more chaos to sow here, so I can show you guys the rain of arrows. Fighting, on the other hand, here we go. And would you look at that? Rain of arrows just completely took that in. And I'm going to show you a cheese ball trick here. Alright. By the way, you can waste your energy to lower your cooldown of your ultimate if you desire, with preparation. Alright, so you basically got a rough idea of how this rogue works. I'm not going into anything. So there you go, guys. That is the rogue in a nutshell. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get the latest breaks as they come in, and to help this channel grow, the next guide you will see will be the last of the class guys, and that will be the Barbarian. And from there, I will probably do a get started guide for those who are still not sure how to start this game, so maybe a little bit of tips here and there, some things you may not know, and if you do know, pat yourself on the back, but we'll get to that later. This is Big Dave, the Middle-Aged Gamer. This is Diablo 4, and I'll see you all next time.